Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third session of the Vemkar and Zohrab Classical Armenian series surrounding the theme Christ as Hope. So in this series, we're looking at a number of different texts from the fathers of the Armenian Church, our liturgical texts, our hymns, our the writings of the patristic fathers. And all of these are somehow related to the theme of Christ as hope. And so we're going to be joined in this series by a number of different scholars, priests, and advanced students of the language. Last time we had Der Revonta Jamian with us, guiding us through Krikor Datavatsi's Karos Vasen Huso, so the sermon about hope, the sermon concerning hope. And we got into the etymology of the word hope. We got into the Vartabed's understanding of hope, how it's distinguished from faith, and how it relates to the other two theological virtues, faith and love. And if you missed that session and you're curious to listen to it, then you can go to the Vemkar or Zohrab YouTube channels and watch the earlier two sessions in this series. And so I can give a brief introduction. We all know Der Revonta Jamian, I think, but I'll just mention in case you're just came across this on YouTube and you're watching now. He is the priest of St. Sarkis Armenian Church in Dallas, Texas. He's a graduate of St. Nerses Seminary, where among many other subjects, he studied Kurapar, classical Armenian with Roberta Irving, Abraham Tirian, and Bishop Daniel Findikyan. And he also spent time in Jerusalem as well as in Armenia. And when he was in Armenia, he even took a classical Armenian course there, pursuing his passion and enthusiasm that he has for the language of the Armenian Church, Kurapar. And so without further ado, I'll hand it off to Der Revont to tell us about the text that he's chosen for us today.
Thank you so much. So let's start with a prayer. Amen. Իմաստություն հոր Հիսուս դուր մեզ իմաստությունս բարիս խոհել եւ հոսել եւ գործել առաջի քո համենայն ժամ իջար խորհրդոցի բանից եւ իգործոց փրկյաս մեզ եւ ողորմյա քո արարածոց եւ մեզ փասանեղածս. Amen. So let me get the screen up and get this one ready. Okay, and let me move everyone out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. So we're doing tonight Christ as hope, right? And hope in death. But first, a quick review. For those that weren't here or are joining in the middle of the series on YouTube, last time we spoke about the etymology of hope. And the etymology of hope, as we see here, is, so in English, hope means wish, trust, or to have confidence in something. And it's first recorded around the year 900 or a little bit before that. It's of an unknown, see, I even correct the word origin again, but origin, I must be trying to Armeniify it. Origin, but it's related to the Dutch and the German, and same with the Old English and the Middle English. It just has this idea of wish or to trust or to have confidence in something. Whereas the Armenian, huis, or husal, it comes from the prefix ini, which means towards or to, and us, which means shoulder. So to have huis or husal means that thing upon which you lean your shoulder, which you put your shoulder on or you lean upon. So I just want to keep that in context when we talk about our topic tonight. Last week, as Jesse had mentioned, we spoke about Saint Gregory of Datev, and just as a little recap, He lived in the end of the 4th and early 15th century, and he wrote many things, but one of the two main books he wrote, was the Book of Questions and the Book of Sermons, both in a scholastic style. And last week we spoke about what hope is, and he says hope is the assured expectation of the future goodness, which comes from the grace of God and good works. He also spoke about the difference between faith and hope. Sometimes we use these interchangeably, but he said faith is for the past and for the future, whereas hope is always for the future. You cannot hope for something that has already happened. You can only hope for something that is to come. And then he also spoke about how hope does not disappoint, referencing St. Paul in his letter to the Romans, how faith never disappoints, or as we also said, does not put to shame or does not shame anyone. And he said there are 4 things that are needed for this to happen. He said that which needs to be hoped for, which he says is Christ, the one who hopes, which is man, hope in and of itself, which is our strength, and the act of hoping. Those are acts and expectations, the actual action of hoping. And again, he said, for that which may be hoped, which is Christ, 4 things are again needed. That thing which must be hoped for must be capable, must be willing, must have knowledge, and must endure. And he says Christ fits all of those. He says he is all capable. He wills good for all. He knows what is necessary for every man, and he endures forever. And so his conclusion is Christ is our hope and not men. And he says, and he goes on to say that if you put your faith or your hope in men, you will be disappointed. So, questions about what we went over last week? Because this is sort of going to tie into this week's lesson. All right. So, when I was in seminary, my teacher at the time for liturgics is now the current bishop, Bishop Daniel, but at the time he was my dean and my professor. And he taught us one very important thing. He said, you can tell an abundance of a people's faith and their history by looking and reading their book of rituals. Because you will see in there what was so important that that church or that group of people, that faith, right, what they decided to put into their book of rituals and what they left out as well. So for the Armenians, our book of rituals is called the Mashtots. Nothing to do with Mesrog Mashtots. The two have no connection. Mashtots is the name of the book, and every priest has this, and even deacons have this usually. It's called the Book of Rituals. Another word for it is Tsisaran, right? It comes from the Armenian word zes. This is an e usually, which means a tradition, all out if you know it, zes.
A ritual.
A ritual, thank you. A ritual, thank you. And aran, which means a place of. So a place where rituals are kept, right? And we all know that when it's an when it's combined with another prefix or suffix, it turns to an ini, right? So words like ser becomes sirel, etch, like etchmiatin, is turned into the word ichnel, right? Our favorite one, esh, becomes ishuk, right? So that's what that is. So tsisaran or mashtots. So in all of the churches, you have the basic rituals. You have all of them have the same things. They all have baptism because that's really important. They have weddings. They have home blessings, right? You go to a Greek church and you open up their mashtots, their book of rituals, they'll have these in there. You go to even the Catholic Church, if you go to even the more, the Protestant churches like the Lutherans or the Episcopalians, they'll have these in there. And then some churches have lesser known, that are usually reserved for that church. The Armenians, for example, we have some unique ones, and I can't say whether or not other churches have these, but I know these are very, very rare in the Armenian church to actually do. So we have services for the blessing of a bride's dress. Before a bride is going to get married, they bring the bride's dress to the church, and the priest blesses it. A prayer for the difficulty for a difficult pregnancy. So if a woman is going to be having a difficult pregnancy, is having trouble, there's a special prayer that's done for that. And there's also a prayer for blessing of a well. So if you have a well outside, you're about to dig a well and you want water, you call Derhide and you say, Derhide, we want you to come and bless this area so that the well will be plentiful. And so these things, we then ask ourselves, why did the Armenians want to have a special service and take up paper? Because paper, remember, was expensive. Why would they take paper and write a service for blessing of a bride's dress, or difficulty with pregnancy, or blessing of a well? What's the purpose behind this? And we don't have to get into that now. That will be another session for another day. But these are things that we need to think about. Another thing that is interesting in the Armenian Church's book of rituals is the funeral. The funeral, by far, if you look in a mashtos, and I don't have one readily available, unfortunately, a vast majority of the paper in a mashtos deals with the funeral service. If you've ever been to a funeral service for the Armenian Church, in the Armenian Church, you have a service that's done at the home. We usually do this at the funeral parlor or in the church the night before. It's called the Dangar, the home service. There's the Yegeret Vogar, the church service, and then there's the Keresman, right? Keresmani Gar, the service of the interment, when you are burying the person. And then after that, there's a service for the next day, the 7th-day anniversary, the 40th day anniversary, and then the yearly anniversary. So that takes up a huge chunk. But what was even more interesting that I discovered when I was in seminary was that we have 2 funeral services. We have one for adults, but we also have a service completely set aside for children. And the same thing, a service for the home, the church, and the cemetery for adults and for children. And then on the next day, the 7th day, the 40th day, and the yearly anniversary, a service for each of these. And so then the question arises, why would the Armenians write a service specifically for children and a funeral? Why would you think? I'm asking you, why would the Armenians write a special service for children's funerals?
Because some of them are not baptized yet.
That's a very good guess. But in fact, no, that's a good guess. No, it's a very good guess. And I like that you asked that, you said that. In the Armenian, in the prayers, we'll see that they are all baptized. It says that they're baptized. But you're on the right path. I like where you're going with that. So why would we have children's service, a children's funeral, a child's funeral, I should say, and adults? What's different in the 2?
Well, considering that with an adult,
Mhm.
it's always sad when someone dies, but if someone reaches the age of 90 or 95, you can say, well, eventually everyone dies, but he lived a full life.
Yes.
But what can you say if it's a child, 2 years old, 3 years old?
Exactly.
Younger than that?
That's right, because they have lived different lives. And I use that word loosely. They've lived different lives. Because a child, it doesn't say in the mashtos, it doesn't say in the book of rituals, up until their 18th birthday, you do this service. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say either it's up to the priest to decide when to do this service. It's just something that we look at and we think, okay, this is the service that needs to be done. Thankfully, I have never done a child's burial service. I've never done a child's funeral, and I hope I never do. I know priests that have, unfortunately. But the service is different because the prayers speak to different aspects of those lives, and we're going to examine those a little bit. So, this is the adult funeral prayer. This is the first half. It's a long prayer, and it's on 2 pages, so we're going to go through this now. And those of you that have done funerals and have participated in funerals with a derhide or a haisut may recognize this prayer, because this one almost always is read at the gravesite. So it starts off, Astvats hokvots yestechtzich mamnots, right? God of souls and creator of bodies, right? We're already setting the stage for who God is. Deres gentanyats, yev harutun merelots, right? You are, S, you are Lord of the living and resurrection of the dead. Or it could also be translated as resurrection to the dead, because in classical Armenian, there is of and to have the same meaning. Daviches parutians yev mochitarich amenain vishtatzelos. You are the giver of good things, right? Here's it. And the comforter to all who grieve. Yev hankut sich habado vikes nenchetzelos. And the one who grants rest. There, I mean, in English, we have to say, we can't say rest, the rester. We can't say that. So we have to use a helping verb. The one who gives rest or who grants rest to those who have fallen asleep with faith in you. All right. So these first 4 lines all explain who God is. We're setting the stage. All right, God, this is who you are, and this is why we've come to you. Zors Jehovetsev Jeshmarit Jeshmatutun Ko Ikochumen Havado. You gathered them with your truth at the calling of faith. Yev Hostatsar Havadatselotskos. As hankisten havedenagan genatsin anvach janitz. And you promised to your faithful, right, to those who believe in you, the everlasting life of eternal rest.
Yeah, excuse me. Could I
Yes.
ask a grammar question?
Yes.
The line before, Zoros Jehovet Ser as Jishmardutun Kov.
Mhm.
Why isn't it Jishmardut Kov?
So in Karapad, you could do it either way. More often than not, if the Kov came before the Jishmatutun, then definitely it would have to be Jishmatutiam. It would have to be Jishmatutiam. So Kov Jishmatutiam. But it doesn't necessarily have to be in Karapad if you're putting the possessive noun, a pronoun after the noun. So you could say, for example, Matit, or they wouldn't have Matit, Karich imov, through my
Right.
pencil. Otherwise, you'd have to say imov. Actually, it wouldn't even be imov.
Kirchav or something?
Inev, imov. It would be probably, I think, if I remember correctly, imov Kirchav,
Yeah.
something like that. But a good question, very good question. And you'll see that sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. This way, it doesn't have to be, but the other way, it has to be. Everlasting life, right? Or eternal life, eternal rest. Kanzi heramayet ser nahahoren merum unil san mahagan kyansi. For you commanded our forefather to have immortal life. So who's our forefather? Whom did God command to have immortal life?
Adam.
Who?
Adam.
Adam. Very good, right? He told Adam, you will live forever. You have eternal life. You are not supposed to die, right? We sometimes think that in life we're destined to die. Now we are, but that's not part of God's plan. Death is not part of God's plan. Yev gatsuser azna ivera amenain seragerats kots, right? Seragerats kots. And you stood him or placed him upon everything which you have made by your hand. You placed him over everything that you created with your hands, right? And this is a very beautiful word. If you can ever use this word, serra gert. Gert means to build. Ser means right hand. So Stepana Gert, right? The city in Artsakh. It's the one that's built by Stepan, right? Dikrana Gert, right? Dikrana Gert Siner, right? Those who are from Dikrana Gert, whom Dikran built, the city that Dikran built. And Gert is very similar to the Russian word, those who speak Russian, Grad, like Stalingrad, Grad, Gert, they all come from the same root. And it's also connected in German with Berg, that erg sound, that So like Hamburg or I don't know of any other cities in Germany, unfortunately, except for Hamburg. But Berg, so that ending means to build. So Tserakerkos. Եվ զամենայն ինչ հնազանդ արարեր իներքո ոտից նորա. And made, so right, you placed him over everything that you created with your hands and made everything subject unto his feet. Right? Inerko votits nora, under his feet. Yev itzeren hansanans nora. And because, or by means of his transgressions, right? Itzeren, it literally means through the hand of, or by the hand of, or with the hand of. This idea, so by means of his transgressions, Gochetzer azna hekir usti arav. You called him to the earth, from which, usti means from, or from where he was made. Okay, so this is the first half of this prayer. Questions about it? It gets better, I promise you.
What is the called him to earth? In what sense? Called him back to earth, in other words?
Yes, from dirt you were made and dirt you shall return, right? And then we're going to see that in a moment. So, right, so because of his transgressions, you called him from the earth to earth, because he was made from the earth, right? And so now he has to return to it. Yev darsial hostatsal anjareli hostmam. And again, you promised, so this is another promise, he says, right? He promised eternal life in the beginning, or eternal rest. Now he's saying, you promised with your ineffable promise, right? Ineffable is a nice fancy theological word we like to throw around. It just means unspeakable, that which that cannot be expressed. With your ineffable promise, itzeren, right? Here's that word again, itzeren, which means by means of. Kalistian miatsni ko hashar harutsanel azmerialis. And again, you promised with your ineffable promise, through the coming of your only begotten to this world, to raise the dead. Yevasel amenagaro yev hazor panivkov mamnatselo, and to say through the incarnation of your almighty and powerful word, that's Jesus again, right? That, so if we go just back up a little bit, and again you promised with your ineffable promise, through the coming of your only begotten into this world to raise the dead, and to say through the incarnation of your almighty and powerful word, which is referring to Jesus, Yegait aris amenaim Ashhartiak, Yev Zenabernik, Yev Yes Hankutzitz, as it says. I think this is a spelling mistake right here, but I have to double check. Come to me, all of you who work and are heavy burdened, and I will grant you rest. Right? This is what Jesus says. So now, so this whole first part is talking about who God is, why we're in the state we're in right now, and what your promise has been. We haven't made any requests yet. Now we come to the request. Hanko derastvaz as hoki zaraisko aisori, itzeren panit aitori. Grant rest, Lord God, to the soul of this your servant, through that word of yours. Through that word which you have promised us, you as well, who are the word, grant rest to this servant. Yev kurya asa, ikir hankistian paravor arkayutyanko. And write him or her, right, in the book of rest of your glorious kingdom. There's no good word for this in Armenian, unfortunately. For hankist, we say rest or relaxation. You don't really talk about relaxation at a funeral. We usually say rest, but in the book of rest of your glorious kingdom.
Would you say, excuse me, Dad, you'd say repose maybe in English would be a more appropriate way for a funeral?
I grew up in New Jersey. We don't have good English, unfortunately. So yes, repose would probably be a much better word to use here. In the book of repose of your glorious kingdom. Yev barkev yasama, masen yev bajin, I horansit havidenagan. And grant or give, right, him or her, masen yev bajin, a portion and a lot, a piece and a parcel of your eternal altar. Sometimes this is translated as tabernacle. Yevyete. Now this is where we're talking, up until now, we would say this sounds like a regular everyday prayer for someone who's passed away. When we go to the child's one, we're going to see this next line is going to talk about the big difference between the two. Yevyete matkoren merutsiab inch itse sora I hansanas ashkaris isori. And if matkoren is humanly, this ending oren is a adverbial suffix. We have 4 of them really in Armenian. Words that end in oren, ovin, apes, or apar. You usually put that at the end and makes it the ly, like in English. So humanly, right? I didn't even translate it that way, but that's how it would be. So, and if he or she has sinned because of his or her humanity, or if he or she have humanly sinned, according to the transgressions of this world, anvachjan ko pani betohutun shnoriasama. By your eternal word, grant forgiveness to him or her, right? This we will see does not exist in the child's prayer. In the child's prayer for the Armenians, there is no sin that they could have committed. Adults could, for sure, but little children do not. Yev hamenain meratz yev isenoti hapeyutians, as hoki sora azatya. And from every sin and vain deceit, free his or her soul. And free his or her soul from all sins and vain deceits. Yev zamenain jovurtusko ortnia. Sort of like, and by the way, bless all your people. Okay? We've gone through this whole thing, but also don't forget us. We're still living. Help us. Guide us through this. Zi iberano amenain ararazotskos. Parabori amenasupterutyunko. Aijum yevnisht ihavidyanas havidnitz. Amen. For your all holy lordship is glorified in unison, right? Iberano amenain ararazotskos is glorified in unison by all your creatures, now and forever, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. Right? So this is the adult prayer. And we can see there's 3 or 4 main themes in here. We talk about who God is, why we are in this state right now. Why are we here burying this person? Why do we die? An explanation, almost a little bit of a theological lesson. The promise that God has made, Christ has made to us, that he will grant us rest if we come to him. And then asking that he write this person whom we are burying in the book of life, in the book of repose, right? And may he inherit, or may he be granted, a portion of that eternal altar or tabernacle. And if he sinned in any way, we're sorry. We're praying for him that he be forgiven of that. Okay? Now, questions about that?
Dad Hyde.
Oh.
Why is iperano, how does that mean in unison?
It means
Iperano, like in one mouth?
from one mouth, from a mouth.
So why isn't zi imiperano?
Because the understanding is that all of us, I suppose they could have written it that way, but the idea is that from one mouth, all your creatures glorified. You are glorified from all of your creatures' mouth, as if all of us are saying it in one together. Maybe mouth wouldn't be in English. We wouldn't say mouth. We'd say in one voice. or in unit.
Oh, like, so from the mouth of all your creatures,
Correct.
you are glorified. Okay, yeah.
Correct.
And perano there is singular, right? In other
Singular,
words,
yeah, it's
yeah,
a
so that's
single
why
word,
it'd be like in one. I see what you mean. Okay.
as opposed to, you're testing me now. I'm gonna say it probably
Peranots.
notes.
Perano.
Yes, peranotes.
Oh, thank you. I got approval from love. So notes, which would be then from all the mouths of,
I see.
right? This is more of an idea that we're all acting in
Oh, because the peran is singular.
singular, correct?
Okay.
So yeah, you're right. In English, we translate as unison or one mouth. Armenian, that word does not exist. So it's sort of, you take literary license and you decide, you know what, this is how I'm going to translate it because this is the idea, the concept that's being conveyed. Any other questions about the adult prayer? Okay. So now we go to the children's prayer. So now, this is the funeral prayer for a child. Okay. Ortnyales artaratad yevormaz astvats. You are blessed. Blessed are you, righteous judge and merciful God. Right? Already, again, just like the last one, we're setting up who you are, God. We're setting up so you know that we know who you are.
And, sorry, another grammar question. Artaratad, you translate it as righteous judge as a noun, and it makes sense.
Mhm.
But isn't it an adjective in Armenian?
It
In other
is.
words, righteously judging and merciful God, kind of.
Yes.
I
it
mean,
is-
I'm not
it is a-
nitpicking with the translation. I'm just trying to
Correct. No,
understand.
this is good. This is, you're correct, 100%. It is a adjective, like you said. I was trying and looking for an adjective that we would have in English that would convey this.
There isn't one. Yeah.
There isn't, unfortunately. If we were to translate righteous judge back, right, it would say artar tatavor.
Right.
Right? So you're correct in that. Righteously judging, we would say. But then again, that's more of a noun, that's more of an adverb, verb, right? So you got the concept.
It is a beautiful thing, though. Artaratad as an adjective. That's, I mean, we do a lot of, Armenian has a lot of words like that where you can create that. And it's actually, it does have
It does.
it has
That's
a
what-
flavor that the English version doesn't.
When I was learning Armenian, every Armenian I ran into, when they learned I was learning Armenian, would say, you know, Armenian is such a beautiful language. Harust. It's so wealthy and it has so much wealth and this and that. Well, for a student that's learning a new language, they don't care about the wealth of it. They just want to learn it, and they don't. And then we would always get upset. There are so many words for the same thing. Why can't you just have one word for one thing? No, they have to have 15 words on how to say love or anger or whatever. So this is something along that same thought process where artaratad is, yes, it's a beautiful word. Maybe if we were to go back and find the Latin or Greek roots and try and make an English word out of it, we could, but nobody would know what that means. And it would lose its meaning in translation, literally. So, but you're right. Yes, it is an adjective. And you can use this for many people too. There aren't many people who are artaratad, but it would be wonderful to be called this. So in the comments below, when this is on YouTube, you can write that about me. I am totally okay with that. And I will be more than willing to accept the comments. So, but continuing. Որո ճշմարտությունդ անբատում է եւ ողորմությանդ ոչ գոհ թիվ. Right? So blessed are you, righteous judge and merciful God, whose truth is inexpressible, right? Anbadum. And mercy is uncountable, right? Literally it says, and there is no number to your mercy. There is no number to your mercy, right? So it's uncountable.
So is Anbadum, how is that inexpressible? I mean, in my simplistic mind, I thought that was unlimited. In other words, bad as in wall, but I understood that incorrectly, I guess.
It could, so when I looked it up, because I had to double check on this, this is coming from Bad Mel.
Ah, okay.
Bad Mel to tell. So I don't know if untoldable. I don't think that's a word in English.
I was just mistakenly seeing bod and I was
Right.
thinking that it was unlimited, kind of, not constrained.
Yes. So inexpressible, and mercy is uncountable. Vorvasin Marta Siutianko, you, right, who for the love of mankind, and this was another word like this, antaratad, Marta Siutiun, we have to translate it as love for mankind. But the real nice word is philanthropic. Philanthropic, because that's what literally was philo, sir, and anthropic, mart, right? But when we say philanthropy or philanthropic today, we're thinking of other things. We're thinking of museums or the art projects or donating to the arts or whatever, or theater. That's what we think of when we think of philanthropic sometimes. But really love for mankind. Lucer iho shinchavur marminis as patrialis I pansar buen. So you, who for the love of mankind dissolved into dirt the animate body, and we're going to go into this for in a minute, and the deceits of the tempter. So animate. Oh, yeah, animate. The word animal, animus from Latin, animus means spirit, one who breathes also, okay? Inanimate objects are things that do not breathe. Animate objects are things that breathe. So the animate body, that means us, the things that have bodies that and are breathing, not the rocks, not the trees, and we're not getting into a concept of philosophy of trees, if they breathe or not, don't worry about that now. Rocks and things like that. So for your love of mankind, you made us back into dirt. This whole thing of death is actually a gift. And the deceits of the tempter. The word, this is a beautiful word, even though it's not a nice word, bansarku, right? Bansarku, which means tempter. It literally means one who throws words. Banis, right? Words. And argel, arganil in Karapa, arganel, if I remember correctly, means to throw, right? To throw something. So, what are some words in modern Armenian that have this? Kanargel, right? To throw around kanutun, like to test something, to discuss something, right? We're going to throw that around.
Does pansargu mean tempter or liar?
It can mean either one. The real word, the real translation literally means, if you're taking it word for word, the one who throws words around.
Okay.
So it could be in the dictionary, especially, it can be tempter, it can be deceiver, it can be, it says Satan, it means the devil, it means one who tricks.
Slanderer.
Right. Slanderer, yeah.
Slanderer.
Slanderer might be an actually very good word in English, yes. Because one who slanders, one who throws words around and just sits back and watches what happens. Right? Maybe a nene. No offense.
Gerhard, why is badreal, is that related to the word badrel, like to cut something apart?
I don't think so, because that one is a rolling R. Batervel.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This one is just the regular Batrial. It's really, and I don't remember, to be honest with you, what the original form is of this. Batrang, I think it's Batrang,
Okay.
which is just deceit.
Why do they have the S on the end of them?
Because it's plural. So it's plural. So this is the accusative case, plural. So
And the other one, marmin, is also?
So bodies. This should have been bodies. You're right. You called me. You got
Oh,
me.
like bodies, in other words, all the bodies of people.
The animate bodies. So all the animate bodies, all the bodies that are breathing, and the deceits of the tempter. So for your love of mankind, you dissolved both our bodies into dirt and the deceits that the tempter has given to us or has tried to do for us, right?
Why isn't there a Yev or something in there?
If I could just interject real quick, because I'm pretty sure this Badrialis, so it's a past participle that's like modifying the marmin. So I think it's, you dissolve the, exactly like you have it, the animate body, and then this is like, which was deceived
Was deceived.
by the slanderer. like
Ah,
the one which was
Oh.
deceived by the
makes-
slanderer.
you don't know how long it took me to figure out this sentence. This was the
Yeah.
last sentence of this whole thing I translated because I had to go back to it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
So
it's an unusual word, but yeah, they're exactly badrank.
it
It's
was
like
that makes
deceit,
more sense.
fraud, things you believe that aren't true.
Mhm. So we will correct this and say, does you who love man, for your love of mankind, dissolved into dirt the animate body that was deceived by the tempter or by the slanderer, we should say.
And Derhard, why is there the Z before is Shunshavor and before is Badrialis, but not as Marminus?
So that's, and because, so that's a, and I don't know if there's a special term for this, but the Shin Shavor and Mamin go together,
Okay,
right? So it's actually the Uz starts it and the S at the end ends it. So Shin Shavor, Mamin is as
oh, I see, okay.
Shin Shavoris as Marminus as Baterias, because that just sounds a little weird. This even sounds a little strange right now. But correct, this is sort of a, I'm gonna throw this word out there, it's probably wrong, a noun companion. They complement one another, they go together.
Sure. And also the end of Pansargu, you said Pansarguen.
Mhm,
Do we say pronounce it Pansargven or not? It's kind of like when there's a ini hyun ke, you
exactly.
know, should we say, I mean, yuk or should we say ivk? Ivk makes sense anyway, but
So this one is actually, I was told you can do it either way. You can say Bansar Guen or Bansar Gven. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm saying Uen. But if you're from a more affluent area and you say Ven, I will not hold it against you. Aselo hoch eir yevi hoch dartsis, right? Saying you were dirt and to dirt you will return. Ast vorum honaretsak itzerots minchev tzedegais. Yev yevir madzan mechner. If Jesse wants to chime in on this one, I would be more than willing to listen. Because this took me a while too, because I've never heard this word madzan. And I even went to the original text to see if it was a misspelling, and it is not. I translated it as, therefore, we have been humbled from the elderly to children, that is all the way from the oldest to the youngest. For the earth and our bosom have been joined. All right, so Yegir, earth, Madzan, Madzanil. I looked up and it means to be joined, to be glued, to be united. Mechk, in modern Armenian, it's either your, depending on where you're from, it's either your back or your the bottom part, your waist area, and mer. And the reason why is I looked up mechk and it could also be translated as bosom or innards. The thing
Innards or loins.
loins is a good one, right? Innards or loins. So this idea, and this is what I translated as, and I am open to interpret, I'm open to advice. That now, because of this, we have our innards or our bosom or our loins and the earth have been joined together.
I think that makes sense. It looks very odd to me too, but that root is, by the way, for everyone, the same one that we got madzun from, or
Mm,
yogurt congealing, or
yes,
yes, that congealing of things together.
that's right, and that's what it said. It says to congeal or coagulate was the other word that was used.
Yeah.
And not coagulate in this prayer. So, but if later on somebody knows, if you're watching this at a later date and you want to write in the correct translation, please do so. Okay.
Would you say have been joined? Why wouldn't, could you also say were joined? Is it the passive?
Word joined, you can do word joined too. I think because I wrote, we have been humbled, or we were humbled from the elderly to the, I wanted to keep it, I think, in the same tense. Have been humbled and have been joined. But you could say we were humbled and we were joined.
What tense is that madzan? Or nobody knows?
Aorist,
Okay.
third person plural. So because it's an anim verb, so like kadanim, which means I find, kada, I found.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah, Haskatsa. I don't know cut out part well enough to say,
Yeah, so any, just as a side note, any anil ending would be equal in modern Armenian to just like kneel, kut kneel,
okay.
or kutnem, is it net? I speak Eastern usually at home, so I'm trying to remember what it would be in Western. But it's kadar, kadar, kadav,
Yeah.
Kadan.
No,
kadan, kadak, kadan. And that's this one, madzan.
no, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So before we continue to critique my
But could it mean that our bodies have been coagulated into the earth or something?
that can also be the translation.
Or
Yeah,
Turned into dirt?
that's I think that's the idea of what
Jesse, come on.
cross, that we have returned basically to dirt, that we have, no matter who we are, whether we are an elderly person or a young kid, we all are being, as you said, coagulated back into the dirt, into the earth. Իսկ վասն բազմովորմության քո հոնարեցար մարդասեր դեր նորակել իմես as մարմին հոգևոր. And for your great mercy, right, or according to your great mercy, you humbled yourself, lover of mankind, there's that word again, martaser, to renew a spiritual body to us, to give us basically a spiritual body, to give us a new norokel, right? Norokel imez as marmin hokevor.
So in your translation, you missed the dare. There's no Lord in your translation.
Oh, I did.
So you are humble, Lord who loves mankind.
Yes. Lord who loves mankind. Lord, lover of mankind, or Lord who loves mankind. Yes. I did miss Lord.
It's even in capitals too.
And it makes me even feel worse now. But you're right. Yes. So yes, the Lord should be in there. And then he goes on to say, Areketsar du inket, inken miatzinit por yev derayatsial iserpo kusen. You were sent, the only begotten of the Father, and were a child from the Holy Virgin. So, right, this is we're talking about, this is a prayer for a child's funeral, and we're saying to Christ, you who were a child, you were at the same age as this child that's now being buried, right? So you were a child, you know what this is.
So would the infinitive of that be derayanal?
Yes.
So
Or
then-
would it be Degaya now? Does it have the such,
Because this
you were
is
made child?
this is you were a child, you had become a child, as opposed to you were made a child.
Yeah, okay.
If we were saying, like you said, you were made a child, it would be derayat sutsial. That uts would be in there. But because we're saying you were a child, not you were made a child. It's a nuance.
Is it like Degaya? Is it like Martatsav, Marmnatsav?
That's the same idea.
Became
As-
man, he became then you know.
right. So
became a
like
child.
sevanal, to become black or to blacken. Oh no, that wouldn't be the word to be used. Let's say because it's the same in English. Habartanal, to be proud, to become proud. Habartat sanel, to make someone proud, right? So this one is saying you were a child, as opposed to saying you were made a child. You were a child from or by means of the Holy Virgin. That's how you became a child, by the Holy Virgin. You weren't just poof, a child, but you were made a child by her. Questions? Okay. Debaboretser hansin kun azma marnov gamavorates. Zidatses mes as ko anmahutunet. You imprinted, or you willingly, right? Gamavorates. You willingly imprinted on yourself death in body, or by the body, that you would give us your immortality, so that you might give us your immortality. So you willingly died in body, not in soul, right? Not in spirit. You died in body so that we might have immortality. And it goes on to tell what he did. Icher ikeresman, you descended to the grave. Hamarelov ant merialis, being counted among the dead. Yev harutzia hampatsar hergines, and resurrected. I put an extra comma in here because in English it sounds better. And resurrected, you ascended to heaven. Yev asiyelyatzkot azmarmin konarutyan. Dengagit yev gebaranagit arnel hostatsar mamno paratskot. You promise to make your beloved ones, whose body is humble, and this I had trouble with. So again, Jesse, if you want to chime in, I'm more than happy to entertain any suggestions you have. You promise to make your beloved ones, whose body is humble, to spring forth and conform to your body of glory. If there's no suggestions, I'm going to keep going, which means I was right.
Dengagits is a weird word. I mean, is dengagits mean planted together? I mean, in other words,
Yep, that's exactly what it means.
Co-planted.
Co-planted.
right.
And I tried and I looked it up because I was like, all right, what's a good English word for this? And the only translation they had was to spring forth.
Does it mean, Der Heide, that does it mean that our bodies, or that his body was planted and was the same form as us?
That's a good question. I would surmise it means more along the idea and the way of when we are buried, we're buried like a plant in the ground. And at the resurrection, St. Narcissus Schnarly talks about this, that we will come out of the ground like flowers, not like zombies of the apocalypse, right? But rather like flowers that have been transformed and spring forth in a new body, transformed, right? Because when you put a seed in the ground and bury it, and then it comes out, genetically, it's the same exact thing. That seed and the plant that you have are the same exact thing, but they have been, it has changed somehow. Likewise, when we are buried, we will be placed in the ground, and we too will be dengagits with Christ. We will be planted in the ground like Christ was planted in the ground, and come out like he did, transformed, resurrected with a new body, with a new, with the resurrection, new life.
That's such a beautiful line. It's following like Paul's terminology of, I think it's Apostle Paul, of like Christ is the first fruits from the dead. So
Exactly.
the first thing harvested. And so then we are co-planted with him, and then we will share the same form, following also like the image, people made in the image of God, but we're going to share the form of the resurrected Christ.
Yes.
Our humble body of dirt will share the same resurrected body that he has.
Exactly. And this is the hope. Imagine, or don't imagine. Oh, yes. Imagine that you're there with a family. It's not your family, but you're there with a family who's lost a child, right? And you're hearing this prayer. This is a prayer of hope that, you know what, this child is not gone forever, because you promised to make them, even though this is little humble, quiet, still body, this child will spring forth and be like you who are in glory. It's easy to think of that when we're people, when we're, I shouldn't say people, when we're adults, right? But a little child, that they are going to be transformed into this glorious body one day. That this is not the end. This is the hope that we have. The hope of the resurrection is here. And I just want to go on because I know we don't have a lot of time, because it's really good, the ending here. Hedevil ko der ipoh hedin horjamkas vartsis sielyatskos. At your appearance. So this is all going to happen when? At your appearance, Lord, at the last trumpet, when you come to reward those who love you. Art. These next two lines are 3 lines, and probably the most beautiful of this prayer. Art agachem fiskez mangatsyalit astvaz Jesus Christos. Now we ask you, you who were a child, O God, Jesus Christ, You who were a child, who knows what this child has gone through. Ara arjani is the Zeis. Paravorutian and artaris ko habur hainmig. Make this child worthy of glorification with your righteous on that day. Hanti bil, this is the one that I lost today. This is one of my favorite part. Hanti bil kez zavart yeresok. Yev paravolen tsinzutiamp yev kohutiamp eskez and hor yesuk pokuin. And to meet you, that on that day when that child is resurrected and made worthy of glorification, may that child meet you with a joyful face, running towards you, basically, as a child sees their mom or dad, and to glorify you with cheerfulness and thanksgiving, together with the Father and the Holy Spirit. So this idea now that this child who has died is going to wake up, rise from the dead, be transformed into something that is better than we could even imagine, taking on Christ's body, his form, and running with a happy face, a joyful face, and to glorify with cheerfulness and thanksgiving, both the Father and the Holy Spirit. There is one more prayer. I'm going to go through it very quickly, okay? And then we can turn it off and we can talk if we want about it. Puis salutiam mero de Jesus Christos, hope of our resurrection, O Lord, our Lord Jesus Christ, or avadaranetzer eschautiun heraborats yev mersaborats. You who preached peace to those far and near, sasanelovis tishnamutiun mahu meras, shaking the hostility or the enmity of death, of the death of sin. Gohanam kisken, or arad martasiutiam kov zanetsis lutzer. We thank you, for you untied the curse through your abundant love for mankind. Is tejovis averetzer, yev azmez zamenesian harkayutunit yeknit veratzer. You destroyed hell and brought us up to your kingdom of heaven. Yev itasak sutunis reshtagats harnetzer, and mixed us among the ranks of the angels. Yev aijum jovovial mer ihan kis de rais isorik. And now we who are gathered at this place of rest for this child, this is at the gravesite, right? Hunchem, zavetis harutian, jishmari barbarov surp avederani. We pronounce the good news of the resurrection with the true cry of the Holy Gospel. Yevonaria arachiko agachempes parekut martasiutunko, and humbling ourselves before you, we ask for your compassionate love for mankind. Hanko der ashoki de rais isorik and andrialisko, and grant rest, Lord, to this child together with your chosen ones. Yejaranga gizara asas sebotskos harkayutiana dieknits, and make him or her a co-heir with your saints in your kingdom of heaven. Yevasmez and nosin ajani ara harazavaj hekranok ornel askez and horius pokuin ajm yemish idan samen, and make us worthy together with them to bless you with ever pleasing joy with the Father and the Holy Spirit, now and forever to the ages of ages. Amen. Coming back to what we said in the very beginning, what hope was, hope is leaning on someone with your shoulder. So the question then always becomes, when someone passes away, when death happens, and it happens to all of us in our lives, personally and to those around us, the question is, when someone dies, whom do you put your shoulder, whom do you cry on? Whose shoulder do you cry on? Do you cry on Christ's shoulder, which this is the painting of Lazarus, the resurrection of Lazarus, Mary and Martha, how they cried on Christ's shoulder, and he gave them the comforting words, Yes iskem harun yevkyank, or havadahis tebet yevmerani getse. And truly, I am the resurrection, and the life. For whoever believes in me, though they may die, yet shall they live. They will live, right? So unfortunately, in the day and age that we live in today, people, when someone passes away and dies, people go into depression. and they turn to something else. They cry on something else, whether it be drugs, alcohol, gambling, pornography, relationships, you name it, people will turn to that and cry on that shoulder. Whereas Christ is saying, my shoulder is here. I am your huis. I am your us that you need to lean upon. Lean on me, cry on my shoulder, because it is not the end. Resurrection is coming. That is the hope, right? The hope is the future, as St. Gregory Date told us. And so have that hope, lean on my shoulder, and know that the resurrection is only around the corner. And that's all.
Amen. We'll stop the recording here, and everyone that needs to go may go, and then everyone who'd like to stick around for discussion or return to any of the texts, we can do that. Thank you so much, Gerhard. And everyone who's listening to this, please be welcome to join us next week at the same time.